would be, we will get started.
Right, good morning everybody, and welcome to this interim budget update and a purple book, a first I think for the island as far as I can tell, hopefully a last, but you never know in the current circumstances. So I've got quite a few slides to get through. I'm sure you're more interested in delving down into some of the questions that you feel are either pertinent to your sectors or questions that you may have already picked up from what you understood was delivered yesterday. So we'll get through these slides and then we can get into some questions and answers. But first of all, the first slide here, the support framework. I just wanted to give you an update of where we are and what we've done in terms of the package of measures that we brought forward. This slide really shows what the expenditure has been to date in terms of direct and indirect support into the business community, supporting your businesses and supporting jobs. Now you can see there the biggest items of expenditure have been around the salary support to date, £27.5 million, and the business support scheme, which essentially distributed a £3,000 check, if you like, or interim payment to keep businesses going, small businesses and the self-employed. And the other item that's highlighted there in terms of expenditure is the MIRA, the earnings replacement allowance, which was paid obviously to any individual who found themselves without work during the period, and £30 million of taxation deferral. So broadly speaking, to date, there's been £80 million of direct and indirect support distributed, mostly the majority of it to businesses and the self-employed. And the current situation in terms of unemployment is that we are currently running at 1,100 people unemployed and claiming what the benefit job seekers allowance. We've got 1,500 people claiming MIRA, but the trend is moving downwards in terms of the level of claims. We have done quite a lot of work to try and understand what the position is with businesses and their likely hiring or redundancy position would be moving through. We did a piece of work with KPMG and we've also done a piece of work ourselves just to try and understand from businesses what their current positions are. So although the trend for unemployment and MIRA is moving down, we are expecting higher levels through the autumn and the winter. And the salary support scheme, just to give you an update on that, as at the 1st of April, you can see there we had £10.4 million of claims pertinent to 10,250 jobs. And on June the 1st, that had come down to 1,100 claims, £5.2 million, 5,314 jobs. And that trend continues to move downwards as more and more people and businesses return to work. So I talked about the survey work that we had done. As I said, the first survey was with KPMG and the second survey has just been completed last week from our Economic Affairs Office, and we spoke to 400 businesses and 500 individuals, and the results from that were a lot more confident, as potentially might be expected, than they were from the sort of comparative survey that had been done with KPMG some weeks earlier, when in fact most of the island was in lockdown or very small proportions were coming out. So the survey that we did gave us some indication that first of all, proportion of businesses that expected turnover to remain within normal range or increase was stable, and that most businesses that had temporarily ceased trading and resumed again reported that they were trading as normal. The redundancy situation seems stable from the businesses that responded. And in fact, 73% of the respondents said that they were doing the same or better, slightly better, since social distancing ended. We see that 67% felt that things were going to get better, which was an increase on a previous month. But of course, there are a lot of concerns. So even though our borders are restricted and we're operating in this bubble, perhaps which is giving perhaps a false sense of security, because we are very concerned about the international situation. And you can see there the UK situation in particular, well publicised, GDP down by a fifth. There's been a small recovery in May. But all the reports that are coming through are indicating a serious recession, both that they're in now, but particularly coming up. And we are now starting to get used to seeing headlines such as this: the Office of Budget Responsibility, 12.4% decline in output. 2021 bounce back. Scenarios appear to be increasingly muted or not perhaps at the level that may have been indicated. 192 billion pounds worth of cost just against the fight against COVID-19. Growth, as I just mentioned, short of expectations. And of course, other headlines around businesses, business situations. We've got the Virgin Atlantic rescue deal there. Change in shopping habits, potentially more pressure on the retail sector as people move online, and of course growing debt issues across many countries, and possibly debt problems growing within industry as well. So there's a lot there that internationally is causing us concern, and of course closer to home. There's a number of threats and challenges that are causing concern and issues that we are trying to deal with. Obviously, the fact that there is a global recession now underway, possibly a depression in the future, and the Brexit challenge as well, that may all have implications for the island. The border situation in terms of the restriction clearly is impacting particularly on tourism and leisure, but broadly, arguably on some economic activity. Got pubs, hospitality, and I'd add in retail there versus the traditional change in habits over the winter. We all know that a large proportion of our domestic economy really does make substantial gains in the spring and the summer period, and in some respects has to sort of hunker down through the winter. So they haven't made the gains that they need during the spring, summer, and are going to be facing quite a challenge potentially over the winter, particularly if we're going to have the knock-on impacts of this recession and possibly depression. For the island, we've got concerns also with manufacturing. I mean, we have some 3,000 people employed in manufacturing over here, obviously very cognizant of the situation with regards to aviation in particular at the moment, but also other areas within manufacturing could have an impact on the island. So we're going to be watching that situation incredibly carefully. And we've seen before financial services may face some consolidation, question mark. So if we look back to the financial crisis in 2008, we definitely saw some contraction within financial services. But of course, I'll also add that actually, financial services did come out of it in the end in relatively good health compared to where a lot of observers felt financial services would be when we entered that crisis. But I'd point out, the World Bank, I think it was, who said that they felt that the impacts were going to be twice as bad, or the current impacts were going to be twice as bad as they were in 2008, 2009. So there is a concern there. Construction sector, I understand there are some issues around the supply chain at the moment in terms of getting goods, specialist goods onto the island. But we need to watch that, but perhaps feel a bit more confident. There's a lot of government investment still going on in and around this sector, and we're aware of some fairly ambitious plans from some of our builders. So perhaps less concerned at the moment about construction, but nevertheless there could be a supply chain issue there. And just broadly, consumer confidence, which may impact on the island versus the broad situation with coronavirus, and potentially, if the virus came back to the island, then there would be potentially a change in consumer habits. And of course, nobody really knows, but there's a lot of commentary, as you'll all be aware, around potential winter second wave coming back through the European countries, and particularly into the UK. And that obviously would have potential implications for the island, particularly when we look at any border restrictions that then might come back into play in a very serious scenario. So these are all issues that are potentially in the background. So, given all that, as I said yesterday, not to act at this point or not to prepare would be effectively preparing to fail. So we are putting together an economic recovery plan. We've done quite a lot of work. We've spoken to probably many of you potentially who are on this call now, or some of you. We did a number of workshops with businesses and business leaders, and indeed with Tynwald members as well, to try and understand what people thought and felt would be the key themes for the future in terms of what the island really needed to offer. A digital island, a green island, a safe haven. Picked up obviously in many of the themes that have been previously known to us, attractive to people, the quality of the island, and needed to make sure obviously it was attractive to business. And of course, recognizing therefore that we've really got short, medium and longer term ambitions and needs, we then have just determined that we need to focus this around three key pillars: our people, our island and our economy. And alongside that, we need to be clear in terms of our offering for businesses in the short to medium term, in terms of the stimulus that's going to be needed, and obviously incorporating that all into our future as well. So we've brought forward £100 million, or up to £100 million. Tynwald has approved the spending of up to £100 million. And we're going to use that money to effectively fight back against what could be a difficult scenario, particularly if a lot of these threats do materialize, and that we are facing potentially significantly higher levels of unemployment, and obviously alongside that then increased challenge for businesses, particularly in the domestic economy, but also concerned about how those businesses that are outward facing broadly across the international spectrum may fare, and needing to be prepared for any knock-on effects in that area. So just to drill down in terms of what we're actually planning, first of all, we are going to put together an economic recovery group, which I'll come on to oversee this. But the three key strands are in terms of people, our island and our economy. First of all, our people, recognizing the higher levels of unemployment, we now need to give everybody opportunity, both now and into the future. And underneath that, you'll see the type of schemes that we are considering in terms of how we can help people develop their skills, make them more attractive to businesses, but also try and move forward without having a long-term unemployment issue on the island. In other words, giving everybody opportunity. So there is both a list of key schemes there and areas for focus that we are going to bring forward as quickly as we can. Digital opportunities, post-grad opportunities, apprenticeship training, direct work placements. So working with business to help support them take on individuals directly, potentially some form of work schemes that we may need to bring in if we feel the unemployment levels are increasing beyond a position that would be acceptable, and in order to give people hope and potentially keep them engaged and occupied, help their CVs. And we need to potentially work with industry to understand how we can upskill and reskill individuals to provide a future workforce and employment base for existing companies, but also for companies that I'm hoping we'll be able to attract to the island. And broadly speaking, we've determined that we need to provide up to 1,000 opportunities for retraining and reskilling. Investing in our island, we need to directly invest to stimulate jobs, but also to tackle some of the key challenges that are facing us and provide benefit to the island, particularly climate change being one, active travel and regeneration. So there are opportunities here for us actually to try and take the island forward. And these can be done through bringing forward schemes to tackle climate change. So, for example, it's just listed there as a home improvement scheme. It might be a quick win, for example, to be rolling out some form of grant aid to allow for insulation to take place in a number of homes across the island. We can improve our heritage trail, walking, biking paths. In other words, we can improve facilities, both for our local residents and for tourists. We can look for acceleration to some of the core infrastructure projects that we've got, and I talked about some of that yesterday. And we can create the development agency, and we need to get going with that. It's going to be a platform for us to try and drive investment back into the towns and develop the brownfield sites that we've got. So with the right focus program of direct and indirect investment, we can drive, I think, opportunity forward. We can tackle some of the brownfield sites. We can tackle some of the climate change projects, and we can make sure actually that in terms of our broader infrastructure spending, that we are prioritizing that to get, I guess, those projects that can be quickly brought forward. We can get them forward, and we can also perhaps reprioritize to make sure that we are more broadly delivering projects that are going to benefit the community, but also economically in terms of bringing employment and putting employment out, particularly around that construction sector, design sector, and potentially the environmental sector as well. And all that should contribute to obviously sustaining the economy, but taking the island forward. And then, of course, the third key pillar is making sure that we are investing in our economy, stimulating domestic spend and demand, boosting confidence for business. So a lot of programs that would come through the DFE, but looking at potentially whether there is stimulus that we might think about in the future. It's not in our immediate plans, but we could think about a direct stimulus. And we will be looking alongside how the digital agencies and the other agencies can work together with DFE and advise us as to what we can do to try and keep everybody focused on the local spend and encouraging the local economy to develop further. And of course, all our incentive schemes that are currently sitting with DFE are still there for businesses to change and develop. And then, obviously, critical though that we still support businesses during this period, and we want to keep the economy intact as much as we can. And I think the vision is to keep it intact as much as we can through the next 6 to 9 months, certainly to the spring next year. And so, we are trying to make sure that businesses can access cash and capital. So we are, although the majority of the schemes are tapering off in terms of salary support, and I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. We have, for example, extended the bank loan guarantee scheme. We have brought forward a new working capital scheme, which is basically a fallback. So businesses that are wanting to access capital and can't get it through their bank, they can now look at this next scheme below, which is working capital loan scheme, which is a 6-year facility, first year interest free. So we put £10 million into that initially. And some of the sector schemes are still coming forward in those areas where we feel that because the market is so restricted, there is effectively no ability for companies to trade really effectively in any capacity. And so we are continuing just to provide support for the tourism and travel sector and the accommodation sector. And those were all announced yesterday in terms of the extended support that was being given. So we're going to try and protect business and industries and jobs through the transition period, really, with this next 6 to 9 months. And the other thing I would say, although we're turning off salary support and we're turning off MIRA in terms of the direct support to the majority of sectors, we can and we do have the ability to turn this back on again if the situation demanded it. So it's not something that we're completely discounting, because we have to be cognizant, we have to recognize that clearly the situation on the ground could change. Nobody is that certain about how this pushes forward over the next few months, so we could turn these schemes on again. And clearly, I've talked really about some of this. This is really integrated into the 3 key pillars of our island, our economy, our people. But we do want to focus on our future. We do need to be investing for the future. We do want to be taking forward climate change. We're absolutely committed now to accelerating the broadband strategy. We need to think more about digital strategy investment, more about attracting digital businesses to the island as well. And clearly, we also need to try and find new sectors and new areas of our economy to develop as well moving forward. And this slide really just shows the support framework that we're proposing now. The salary support scheme is still there in the background, although it's reducing. The MIRA stays, although that is tapering off over August and ending in September. The working capital loan I've just talked about. We have got specific sector support still going on for accommodation sector, tourism and travel, and some people who are self-employed in those sectors. The bank loan guarantee scheme continues, so we're backing 80% of the loans that are coming through your bankers. A financial assistance scheme and strategic investment fund continue, and fisheries industry support is continuing. And finally, there is a continued policy to look carefully and work with businesses if they need to defer payments. And we will talk obviously on an individual basis to anybody who wants to talk to Treasury about their position and what sort of proposals might be on offer. And finally, there is a new sick pay scheme for care workers. And I think I talked about governance and delivery, and really the government has come forward, I guess, with these sort of broad plans before, and they've not really been delivered. I think given the situation, certainly from my perspective and others, that we don't want to be left in a position where these things just disappear out to various government departments and are never seen again. So we're going to create a new economic recovery group, which is going to sit below the Council of Ministers. I'm going to chair that alongside Lawrence Skelly, and really it's going to be a delivery group, and we're just going to push to make sure that the projects that are being brought forward are deliverable, represent value for money, but primarily get out there and we can get on and deliver and make sure that these are creating opportunity, are delivering skills and retraining, if that's what their focus is, are delivering on climate change objectives. And also we can use that group to react as well if the situation on the ground changes significantly or to a point where we hadn't envisaged. And then we can use that position to work across government on a quick basis to deliver change and also deliver support. And also it's critical that we stay in touch with industry. There has been, I think, a lot more industry liaison over the last 3 or 4 months in various sorts, and we're going to look at trying to maintain that both directly and indirectly. It was a meeting a couple of weeks ago in the Manx Museum where we spoke to quite a large number, and I think that type of meeting place more regularly would be helpful, and indeed we will be liaising through various groups and agencies as well as we push forward, because we do need to stay in touch and we do need to deliver. So just moving quickly on to the budget now in terms of our financial position. We have delivered a number of scenarios in terms of our income, and we think that somewhere between 120 to 190 million pounds could be the position at the end of the year. But there's a huge amount of uncertainty in terms of our planning scenarios. And this has been the problem throughout this crisis, as often we're sort of just working on a week-to-week basis because we don't truly understand the position that's facing us. But we put together a number of scenarios, and that's what we've come up with in terms of our income base. We've done quite a lot of work. It hasn't been a full budget, as you will understand, both from time pressures, but also, everybody's having to work incredibly quickly. Effectively, departments have done a line-by-line review. We can see actually just within government earnings or government departmental income, £33 million. But in the end, we took down to £25 million worth of overspend, if you like, within the government that we're also going to have to budget for next year. Now, we haven't gone hard on departments at this stage. I just don't think it's the right time to start making potentially cuts across the public sector. That really we haven't had time, I think, to think about that at this point. And clearly, those type of factors we're going to have to take into consideration for the budget in February 2021 and the budget in February 2022. I think both budgets may set out, a slightly different position for the government in terms of its fiscal position and what it needs to do to respond to that. But primarily, the focus for this year now, certainly till next February, will be to support the economy, support our people, deal with unemployment issues, and provide the money, the financing that we need to support business and the economy and to sustain us through as much as possible. And quickly, just moving on to the capital programme. I mean, the capital programme both obviously improves our infrastructure on the island, but many of you know, does provide significant employment opportunities and business opportunities. So we are looking at the capital programme very carefully, and I think I've covered the view that we have on that in terms of bringing forward the schemes that are going to boost the economy and also deliver on our broader government objectives and community objectives. And £6.1 million is being brought forward. Douglas Promenade in particular stands out. We have to get that scheme finished. Working on the basis that we are going to have a proper tourist season next year, then we want the promenade up and running. And many of you will know it's causing significant disruption and problems for businesses in that vicinity. And there's just a number of other areas there that you can see are being brought forward, all of which will involve external agencies across the community working on those projects. And of course, we do have our capital programme, the planned capital programme underway, and there was some fairly significant expenditure planned this year. Anyway, Summerhill View Care Home is now actually underway, and there's a few other schemes there, particularly ground services at the airport, playing fields to sort out at Castle Rush, and a marina drainage job, and obviously the promenade. Just in terms of our broader financial position, as you can see, obviously the reserves have taken a hit, relatively shielded, I might add, but nevertheless probably 100 million or so down from where we were in December and January. Obviously we stay in touch with the investment managers. We recognise the importance of these reserves, and we are going to obviously look carefully as we move forward. But a wholesale withdrawal from our investments really does not make a lot of sense. And we've spoken to our investment advisors, and so we're just going to hold very much, or seek to hold as much as we can. We're relatively well protected from a cash position, but we are going to take out a 250, or we have arranged a 250 million pound credit facility if we need to bolster our cash, our actual cash from a management perspective. And we're also going to consider whether or not a bond is an appropriate mechanism to take us forward. There's still quite a lot for us to work out. And of course, you know, with all the uncertainty going on, you know, positions take some time to unwind and to reveal themselves. But, you know, absolutely, I've been asked a number of times, are we okay? We are okay. We've been prudent with our assessment of the situation in terms of taking out the £250 million credit facility if we need to, you know, and we're going to take the right advice over our options for a bond. Clearly, obviously, I know that many people feel that we should. There are others that feel that we shouldn't. You know, the debt borrowing rates, interest rates are incredibly low. We all recognise that. But we also recognise that, you know, we have to consider what the future position might look like, both, I guess, from government income perspective, but also whether the position in terms of rates, etc., would change to a position that would cause us problems. And I think one of the things about the island at the moment, one of the attractive parts to it, is that really relatively public debt is incredibly low, and you know, we have to balance that all out. But we will come back to you and Tim Wald probably in, you know, the autumn to determine whether or not, and to let you know whether or not we think a bond is the right way forward. Just potentially a quick overview of what we expect. So cost-wise for this year, possibly £310 million, national insurance, possibly £98 million of support or expenditure coming out from there. We've got the £250 million credit facility, and there's a quick assessment of our position, our fallback position in terms of the national insurance fund amounts and the amounts that we have in the general reserve. So we're okay. Don't let anybody tell you that we are not okay, but clearly we're dealing with a difficult situation, and you know, a day of reckoning in terms of totting all this up and working out how to take the island forward from a sort of fiscal strategy perspective will come, but that will be February next year. So that's it really. Rebecca, over to you, and happy to take questions. And I'm sorry for the length of that. There's quite a lot to get through, and there's quite a lot of detail behind that as well. So
thank you very much, Minister. I really appreciate the time on that. So a few questions have come through. Is there scope for a national savings scheme, paying interest to individuals with cash that is doing nothing, which would then be taxable income?
Is there scope for, listen, there's scope for a number of options to consider, actually, Rebecca. We need to think about, you know, whether actually, and, you know, I would be in favour of utilising our local resources if we could find the ways, you know, to assist government, provide a return to individuals and support the economy. So the short answer to that is that, you know, we are, you know, we're willing to listen. We're absolutely willing to listen to options. And, you know, part of our discussions with our advisors, I guess, won't just be about sovereign debt, but we do want to consider what range of options that, you know, there might be available for us. So yes, in short, we could consider something like that if it was feasible to roll out and administer. One of the problems that we had or identified initially when we looked at the steam packet debt issuance was that actually the cost of raising bonds in the local market was actually quite an expensive option for us. But listen, nothing's off the table. I'm happy to listen.
Thank you, Minister. Good news regarding the acceleration of the capital programme. Will the same encouragement also apply to the consideration and approval of petition requests from local authorities seeking to develop their public sector housing portfolio?
Well,
a minute is.
Sorry, I'm going to bring in Caldrick who wants to comment.
Sorry, just say that one of the project streams there is about investing in our island, and that is looking at where possible to bring forward capital programs, and also to look where we can create employment opportunities. Part of that, we will be working closely with the local authorities, and if there are opportunities to move things forward more quickly that give a benefit in the next 9 to 12 months, of course we'll take them.
Well, I mean, I think part of the point about creating, also the economic recovery group is to try and coordinate a lot of this, Rebecca. The capital infrastructure programs, housing programs, and we also need to balance out the fact that in the past, actually, what we found is that there's actually been so much work put into the marketplace that we've almost run out of resources or run out of local resources. I guess what we're going to try and avoid is having a situation where a lot of our skills are committed to, whether it's Summerhill View, the promenade, the airport works, social housing works, only then to find, of course, that then people are bringing in skills from the UK, whilst we wouldn't necessarily be against that. But clearly, if we're going to have higher levels of unemployment, we need to try and keep a sensible understanding of the prioritization. So, but listen, all these projects will be given due consideration, and yes, if we can bring forward projects that are benefiting the island socially, economically, and from giving people job opportunities as well, then we will be considering that, and we will also be acting. I think the other thing is, as I said about the economic recovery group, we want to overcome barriers to prevention for things not to happen. We want to find all the reasons for things to happen.
Thank you very much, Minister. It's actually a question from me, if that's okay. The Economic Recovery Group, I'm just interested to understand how that will work. I think during the pandemic, government worked mobilised, support very quickly. They demonstrated that could work very quickly cross departments, which we've not necessarily seen in the past. Can you give some detail into the model of the Economic Recovery Group? Will that be working very closely cross-departmentally, and will it be working quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the intention. I did say to everybody, I don't want to promise a sort of panacea to everybody's ills, but one of the things that we've learned from this pandemic is that actually, if you get everybody, all the decision makers, into one room and present a problem, you can quickly find a solution. And I do appreciate that sort of from a governance perspective, some of those decisions have been sort of effectively made under emergency powers, but there was quite a lot that weren't, and just simply putting Treasury and health and infrastructure in the same room meant that decisions could be made. Clearly we were dealing with an emergency. We've got to take that forward. We've got to try and take the lessons from that forward. And I think the answer, there's two areas. Right? First of all, we've got to get to decisions back to business and industry without having to wait months and months for what I know many people would term the long no. So for new ideas, visions, major projects that could benefit economically, we want to try and provide a mechanism. I can sit there and say, this is a major project, or this is a major sector, or this project will bring benefit. When's it going to happen? What is the problems? What are the barriers? What do we need to do to overcome that? And that's clearly what we're trying to do so that we can get things moving on a quicker basis. And then also the other aspect will be, yes, one liaison with business and industry. Absolutely need to take that on board, and we will provide some clarification to you and business as to how we're going to make sure that happens on an effective basis. And I was going to say something else then, and I've just completely forgotten what I was going to tell you, but there was another aspect to that. Anyway, if I remember, I'll come back to you. Oh, sorry. Yeah, unemployment. We need to check. We want to use that group to monitor unemployment levels. If they are going up and we're not able to assist those people, give those people hope and potential opportunity, then we need to be able to try and react to that. So as well as those kind of business related economic opportunities, I talked about reskilling, retraining, and absolutely, one of the options there for us is to actually directly go to businesses and effectively work alongside them, directly with them, to say, how can you take people on and train them? And clearly we'll work out what sort of government support mechanism would need to be in place for businesses to be willing to do that.
Excellent, absolutely wonderful to hear. Thank you, Minister. Will there be any change to government's procurement policy to better facilitate buy local?
Yeah, I think I want to definitely have a look at the procurement policy, Rebecca. That's actually on my list to do. Within that, we did review that when we came in, I think at the beginning of this Parliament, and tried to change it so that we could create the emphasis for local spend, to give greater weighting to the local bids. That's absolutely on our to-do list, because again, we want to make sure that it's absolutely strategically vital that we are getting as much as we can locally through local businesses. Now, whether those local businesses then are, their onward supply chain is obviously more difficult sometimes to determine. So, but yeah, we definitely need to look at it, and it is on our list to do.
Thank you, Minister. Moving on to Airlinks, what about the development of an airline? We now have control of our sea routes. Other critical needs of the island community are air routes and the telecom infrastructure.
I think air transport is an area of concern. The truth is we've been effectively subsidising skeleton air services throughout this pandemic. I, like everybody else, is keen to see a resumption of air travel, but it's difficult. The option of an investment into an airline or development of a specific airline has not formally reached Treasury. I guess that I'm sceptical about that in terms of how that would actually work if that proposition did come forward. I think actually, I know there's complaints, but broadly, EasyJet has provided a very good link. I think we're securing and looking to secure the links now with Loganair for patient transport, and trying to understand how they can service those more regional hubs. So I understand, but it's still a very uncertain situation. I think we're trying to manage that situation as much as we can by strategically keeping these routes alive with these payments that are effectively being used to support airlines at the moment. And I guess it's all going to be about the border and the restrictions that are in place as to whether we can get a proper service up and running. Look, if we can't, if this becomes a hindrance for us, then we would have to think carefully about our overall sort of open skies policy.
Thank you, Minister. Are there any initiatives to address the ageing population and encourage growing economically active population? And is there an awareness that the hospitality sector is crucial to attracting and retaining this population?
Yeah, I think the ageing population issue is one that we've been dealing with. And that's really been the focus of the Locate strategy. That's been the focus of the offerings, the support mechanisms that have been in place to ask and help businesses attract staff to the island. Really, the only way we can address that rebalance is by growing our economy, by getting, attracting what I would describe as about, key workers in that 25 to 45 year bracket, and ensuring that we've got an attractive proposition for them to come to an island. It's an ongoing battle, but I guess we will be looking at one of the options that we have to look forward is ensuring that we have got the right support mechanisms in place to help businesses bring skills and skilled workers to the island, and making sure, of course, that in doing so, or hoping in doing so, that of course these workers will be contributing to the economy for quite some period of time to come. But this is an ongoing policy matter that we've got to continue to deal with, and it's about ensuring that we've got the right support mechanisms for business and new business to come to the island, and with that the workforce that we hope will see help redress the balance of the ageing demographic.
Thank you, Minister. Do you have any evidence that the cut in VAT is in fact being passed on to the customer in order to stimulate demand, or is this instead being taken as an additional margin by suppliers?
I don't have the evidence on that as much as everybody else. I see the social media feedback, but look, I mean that's a commercial decision. I mean the VAT cut is there to stimulate demand. You know, that is the idea. It's to give everybody in the hospitality industry the opportunity to get customers through their door. I think that would be disappointed if that wasn't being widely utilised. But I guess I'm not going to be critical of people. They've got an opportunity there to stimulate demand. I hope they're doing it. One or two business models may be slightly different, but it's a business. That's a commercial business decision. And the government, the UK government, the Isle of Man government, who followed suit, have made that decision to stimulate the economy, to stimulate demand, and I hope it's being seized upon by those in the industry.
Excellent. Getting quite a few questions around buy local and encouraging local buying. Within that as well as understanding what strategies government have in place to encourage buy local, will there be an internal drive within government to encourage their own departments to buy locally?
Yes. In short, we have taken forward a measure to allow actually those people who are in this space to raise. We've raised the threshold for what we call quick quotes up to £250,000, and as I said, we will be taking a very close look at the procurement policy as it stands to see whether and how we can improve that to make sure that we're all rowing in the right direction on this, because it is important now. It's important for government, it's important for business, it's important for individuals to really think very carefully about their spending and expenditure, and if it is being directed off island, whether that can and realistically should be put on island, because that circular economy, whilst we certainly have these border restrictions in place, and whilst we're faced with the ongoing threat, is vital, and ultimately we all benefit if that if we can sustain our own economy and provide jobs and opportunities for the employment base that we have here at the moment, as well as obviously attracting in new skills.
Thank you, Minister. Yesterday's budget provides the necessary support for the Manx economy to overcome the crisis. In the longer term, are there new business sectors which could be nurtured to provide the island with a fresh platform in a changing world? In particular, is this an opportunity to boost the climate change programme as well? Yeah, I mean,
absolutely. I think there are new sectors that can be developed. I think if from what I understand, and one of the things we'll draw out with the Economic Recovery Group, there are actually a number of exciting projects that are underway with existing businesses on the island who are looking to, in a couple of cases, build new headquarters, bring over staff, develop their offering. I would like to understand more about some of those opportunities. They're I guess, in the e-commerce digital sector. I'd like to understand what more can be done in those areas. I think there are opportunities in the environmental side. We are going to look at the climate change program. We've got to look at things like e-charging points. We've got to look at housing insulation, and we've obviously got to work out and understand how the infrastructure around that is going to work as well, what the power source is going to be moving forward. There's plans that we can, I think, develop that have been laid out in the climate change plan, and alongside that there could be clearly opportunities for business, new businesses sit alongside that. And one of the things we'd have to consider is how do we obviously train and upskill the workforce to ensure we're meeting all the right standards to ensure that the work that's been done, the infrastructure work, does meet the required objectives for both the plans that government has, but also the standards that are required to make sure that these are meeting climate change, the climate change targets. So huge amount to do there. And the other thing is of course new sectors. I mean, we've talked about hemp now for long enough. I think that'll be one of the areas, for example, that we will be looking to progress if we can. And we're listening to anybody else who's got potentially plans now for the island that can be actually brought forward. As I said, if we can overcome the barriers in a far quicker way than we have been doing in the past, then that will be the plan.
Thank you, Minister. Just got a few more minutes, if that's okay with you. The new economic strategy that was promised to be delivered by October 2018, why wasn't it delivered, and where does that sit now with the new economic recovery?
Well, we will, we have planned a future economic strategy. I think I promised that yesterday. I said that we naturally need to now work out properly where the island sits in all this, what we see the future looking like, what the challenges that are facing us, and what the opportunities are. And in terms of determining that, we obviously need to look ahead to what we think the world is going to look like. Obviously, there's potential issues around taxation that we've been battling with for years now. You can see the pressures coming on again in that particular area. It's pretty standard that when things get tough, everybody sort of starts to look for someone else to blame, if you like, and you see quite a lot of pressure going now straight away back onto the taxation, the global taxation situation, particularly with regards to the offshore. So we've got to look at the tax situation. I guess we've got to look at the environmental situation, and broadly how we can structure the island now, building on I think what we would regard as our strengths from this pandemic, in order to shape ourselves for the future. So we need to have that. So having, getting all these component parts together is going to take us a few months, but I would hope that we would have that ready by back towards the end of this year, maybe even early next year. But as soon as I've got some clarity on that, I'll let you know. But that is an important matter. So just in terms of where we are at the moment, we've got the short, medium term to deal with, Rebecca. We've set that out now. We've set the framework out for how we're going to tackle that. And then, this is really going to impact us from sort of March, April next year. But that's not to say we cannot make progress towards digital, green, safe island in terms of the schemes and the short-term opportunities that we're going to try and capitalise on to support the economy and take us forward.
Thank you very much, Minister. Just to close off, the details of all the new proposed schemes, assuming you will publicise when they're all available to the businesses and to people. And
is that the direct schemes you're talking about? Yeah. So that'll all be up. That will all be up. I hope that'll be on the website today so that people can understand clearly from the announcements yesterday where they stand and how these schemes are going to impact in terms of the tapering off.
Great.
What they need to do and where they need to go if they want to try and access the new working capital loan scheme as well.
Excellent. That's a good point to finish. Thank you, Minister. I will share those links with everybody once they're live. I just want to finish by thanking everybody for attending today, and to thank you very much for your time during this busy period. I really do appreciate it. And a quick thanks to our media partners, MMC, for sponsoring this event for us. We really do appreciate the support that we have from our members. And again, thank you, Minister, and thank you very much, Cordric, as well, for supporting.
Rebecca, if I could just take an opportunity, I mean, I know that I have spoken to some people, but if I could just broadly say to the business community, thank you for your efforts during this pandemic. Thank you for everything that you are doing. I acknowledge that you know, it's an incredibly tough period for everybody. That you know, looking ahead is both a period of opportunity, but also incredible challenge. You know, if we can get through the next 6-9 months in a relatively healthy position, if we can deal with our problems successfully, but also now look to try and capitalize on the opportunities, there will be a bright future ahead. But I do want to just pay tribute to huge numbers of you, all of you really, who fought to keep your businesses going in difficult circumstances, and use the schemes that have been available to hold on to staff and provide them with opportunity. But look forward to speaking with you in the coming weeks and months.
Thank you very much, Minister. Much appreciated. And thank you, everybody, for joining.